attention, please. We're going to start the workshop on November the 1st. And a workshop is simply that. It's a discussion process for the board so that on Friday when we go to vote on items, we'll be better informed, hopefully, and take less time than everybody else. So, but we're on a tight schedule today because we need to be out of here by 12, if not a little earlier. But the good news is I'm shortening the agenda anyway. So, I'll just go through a couple things. We do not vote. We may come to a consensus as a group, but since we don't have but 3 of us out of the 5, I probably won't even be asking for consensus. It's going to be more a opportunity for them to be better informed for Friday. And so it gives us a little bit more, it gives everybody more latitude in that if you got something that you didn't make perfectly clear today, then maybe you can share it with somebody down the road. But we have been working, and the other thing I would ask you to do is stay on topic when you're speaking and be brief, because we do have a full schedule, and I prefer that we don't talk over each other, just for everybody's ease, and I appreciate it. Oh, yes, you're right, and I forgot one other item. We have this little section right here. When you speak, I'm asking you to come up here. The reason is that video records only this front table, and I think it's important as we share this with other members that your point of view is expressed just as clearly as my point of view or anybody else's on the board. Is that fair? Okay. Well, I also want to thank Linda and Teresa. Teresa and a couple other members. Diane City, I think she'll be joining us, but Diane City was part of this committee, and Barb and I worked with the committee to try to come up with update our policies and procedures for the kiln and the glazing. We have a policy and procedure book for our club, but it's not been updated in a lot of ways. And the thing about policies and procedures, they generally happen in board meetings and they put in the book, but we're trying to kind of put our arms around it and make a policy that we can all live with. And having said all that, the thing that's coming off the agenda is I don't have all the information for the memorial funds, so we will be talking about.
You guys got a meeting going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can
No.
I come in anyway?
No, sorry. I'd rather that you did. If you don't, I'd rather you don't.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Thanks. So we'll cut this, we'll only have 2 discussions today. It will be the policies and procedures, and then I'll update you on the tax status information for the club. Okay? And that shouldn't take near as long as this conversation. So we'll start with that. I passed out and laid on the table the written procedures as we've we've worked on these a couple different times, and this is what we've come up with at this point. We do have, and so I don't know whether you want to read through these, you want me to read them to you, or you just want to know that you've got them there in front of you, and then we can have a conversation. We can either do it with each person talking about their points that they're most interested in, or, well, maybe we better start out with the committee chairs. Maybe Teresa, you give your little synopsis, don't have to read them.
I was hoping to keep my mouth shut.
No, but if you want to
no.
kind of give it an
Okay.
overview, and I'm going to ask you to step up here, then I'll ask Linda to do the same thing, and that's probably the way we need to do this. Because everybody else doesn't have the information we do, particularly the people watching this
Okay.
at home.
So,
Thank you.
I can be very brief. Last August or so, after the club reopened, there was a big kerfuffle about who was using the outside kilns and how they were paying for it and what qualified one person to use it and not another. So, the upshot of that was that
Don't worry.
and, oh no, I think that they probably want to check on my car warranty. They seem to always want to do that. So the upshot of that meeting was the board decided nobody could use the outside kilns, except the kiln committee, and I think I tried to word it that the kiln committee of the week was responsible for deciding if something was suitable or if that kiln needed to be used. They said, no, there is no full kiln price for using the outside kiln. We don't use our kilns that way. Everything goes measured on the board and put on the shelves, and everybody works on the same procedure. And that's where under Clay Club kiln policy, that's where that was rewritten. So that was rewritten in August, I think, or September as policy and went into the minutes. It wasn't necessarily, didn't address some of the special needs of the club or some of the special desires of the club, but it addressed how to keep an even tempo for all the club members. My feeling at this point in time, and I was asked to participate in these workshops because I was kiln chief, not because I necessarily had a big problem with anything. But the one thing that I always have trouble justifying to people is, why can't I do that? If she can do that, why can't I do that? And I don't have a good answer for it. It's the way policy's written. I do feel pretty strongly that we get into more club angst when we start making special policies to cover special desires. We're pretty good, I think, at addressing some of the issues that I see on this. Kiln team of the week is very good at firing things in the same kiln if that's the way you want it, at letting you come help load your things if you have a special way you want them loaded, as long as you pay for the space you use. So I don't think those are issues that the club needs to change at this point. But I'll let someone else present their ideas on that. I think that we've done a pretty good job of fragile pieces. I would prefer, and I think everybody on the kiln team would prefer, that you come deal with those yourself. We'll make room in the kiln for you, and we'll tell you what time to be there, and you need to come deal with them yourself. I don't want to mess up somebody's piece that they feel is too delicate for other people to handle, and I think everybody on the kiln team is respectful of that same idea. So really, we need to come up with something that's equitable for the whole club. And I don't feel like a free-for-all that I like to fire my own pieces is probably the best idea. That's where I'm coming from. That's all I got.
Thanks. Linda, you wanna share some of the glazing team and then we'll go from there?
Well, I don't think that we had much on policy or procedure in the glaze team area, the glaze room. That room is very small, and I appreciate the fact that anyone that has been working in there allows my team members to do their glaze work, because our glaze work is for the entire club. And the chemicals that are in there have been there for a long time. I'm not familiar with all of them, but the question came up as to who is using those chemicals and who's paying for those chemicals. And are those chemicals, when they're being mixed, are they being used by everyone in the club or just select individuals? And so that's why we kind of thought maybe we needed to make some policy and procedures on those chemicals. Again, if you're going to be mixing and the kiln committee is not going to want you to use those glazes in our kilns, then I guess there's no reason to be mixing those chemicals for your own personal use if there's no place to fire them here. So I don't have too much else to say. I don't have a problem with what's been going on, except for the fact that I don't think that we're looking at the whole picture, the whole club as a whole. We're just doing a few things for the benefit of just a few individuals, and I guess I just think this is a club, and we need to take care of club members. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And I'll dovetail on that just a little bit in that we do have to remember this is a club that has many, many levels of expertise. We have people that have never been in clay before in their lives, and we have people that have spent their whole lives in clay. And I respect that. But as a club and the expenses that go into running our kilns, keeping them maintained, maintaining glazes and knowing which glazes work in our kilns and don't run and spit and do all the things they can do, then those are the things that we have to consider as a board and how it is, what issues it may or may not be causing, okay? So, anybody else want to say anything? No. Char's at a disadvantage, she hasn't been in our meetings, but Barb has, so. Do you have anything, Barb? No. Okay, all right. What we've got here, we've had some issues that have come up, and I think they're kind of, every time we go through a new project, and I'll give totems as an example. I love totems, and we do a lot of them here. But one of the things that comes out of the totems is nice round balls sometimes when we create them. But I think, and I was just gonna start with the round ball pieces and how we need to have people fire them or prepare them to be fired, because they're the ones that can cause a lot of problems. It's my understanding, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not an expert on kilns, so I have to look at Teresa or somebody else in the room to tell me, but my understanding is the kilns can shake, and when they do, and if they're on stilts, they can roll off the stilts or they can fall, and the stilts also in some instances actually can bend within the firing process, rolls off, hits my piece that was something that I liked really well when it went in there, but now it's attached to yours. And those are the things we have to kind of think about. So first one is that we really would like to have the round items flat bottomed and stable in order to be placed in the kiln, and they cannot have blades on the bottom of them. They can't be assumed that we're gonna put them on stilts and it's all gonna be okay. And I think that pretty much surmises what we've got there. Does anybody have any comments you'd like to make on that? Is there any problems with that? We can go down the list? Great. Okay. Replacement of damaged shelves, and this is not a new policy, I don't think. It's one that's kind of been here, but I don't know that we've always
I think
enforced
it's
it
ever
much.
written down is
Yeah.
what so many of the
Yeah.
problems are.
And so we're putting in here that if there is damage to the kiln that's been caused by somebody's inappropriate actions when they were glazing, for example, if I put an item on there that had glaze on the bottom of it stuck to the kiln, hello? I need to be responsible for that shelf. And part of this comes with the fact that, costs are going up on everything we're doing. But shelves is one area that we're really getting some increases on. So we'd like to put in there that the shelves are damaged during fire due to the members' glaze application and are not repairable by our shelf team that skins them and repaints them. Skins them, grinds them, I'm sorry. We do. Yeah, okay. That we pass that cost on. And what's the feeling group on that? Good, bad, different, too harsh?
No, I think that's well.
No, I think it's good.
Okay. Poured ceramic type pieces, and maybe Teresa, you can help me a little bit here, because I'm not very
Well,
good at that part.
And maybe Carol can help me describe that better, but what I'm talking about is the pieces you can go down to Marjan and buy that are already made.
The little cutesy ones.
So many of those pieces are low fire only. And I think, the policy that's unwritten but was told to me when we started was, we can't fire anything that's not made in the club by a club member. Because we do have a lot of people working outside the club. You can't buy something at a yard sale and bring it in and say, I'm gonna put some more glaze on this and finish it up. No, it's terracotta. No, you're not.
But you did have the Mako class come in and she provided the mugs.
Mm-hmm.
And those were fired too.
And they should not have been, they should have been fired in Little Audrey on
Yeah.
low fire.
Yeah, they fired them.
Yeah, that was,
There
well,
wasn't an
I
issue
was
with that
very,
though at that time.
very
was there?
new in the club at that point, but, Spice Spout had a heart attack when they went through.
So it's been a while since that's.
And it's real easy to go buy things, even when Spice's estate sale happened and there was a ton of bisqueware that had been in his house that people bought and wanted to finish. Well, we can assume that it's all done with comb sticks, but you can't assume that. The kiln doesn't assume anything. And so that's my point, and I'm not sure how to word it best, but that's what I'm trying to say.
People buy clay elsewhere who are members and bring it in and use it and fire it
If
here.
they can tell me where they got it and what it is,
Right.
and that I can look it up and know that it's a cone 5/6 clay, then yes.
So that there ought to be some spot on the form, cause I think there's a spot for supplying your own clay on the
Glaze.
On the glaze side?
on the ticket, yeah.
Yeah, there is a spot on the form where you put what
I
clay
think
you
people
use.
need to be
They need to be
educated
specific about what
that.
clay they used, yeah. Because, you know, people don't realize, they go down and buy paper clay and, well, there's high fire and there's low fire. And then there's mid fire. And, you know, I'm new enough at this that I remember going down to Marjan for the first time and not having a clue what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate for what we do in this club. And we're churning out, 20, 30 brand new members a month in here, so.
I think the tickets need to be, we fill out and put the stickers on. If you want that information on the bottom where it says, if it's not, clay from the clay club, it ought to say,
Well,
it ought to specify must be,
I think the policy can specify that you need pre-approval for clay that's not available in the clay club. And that's simpler than trying, because to be honest, Suzanne, we try really hard to carefully read each slip that shows up on the firing shelf, but it's a lot of slips. And
but I was gonna say from the person's viewpoint, they don't pay attention to what the policy said when they're off buying clay. And maybe they would pay attention if they had to check a different box because it's.
A lot of them don't know there's a difference, that's the problem. We have a lot of new members coming in all the time, and the teachers do the very best they can to get that information out to them. But we have 6 3-hour classes and boom, you're good to go. And they don't get it all the time because we throw so much at them. So we have so many new people coming in, people coming from outside that are experienced.
I'm not saying don't put it in the policy, but is there an additional way we need to educate people?
Maybe the education people, I don't know,
I
need
think-
to talk about that when they're
we talk
do the
about
kiln
that.
thing?
I've started doing a little, session with each new beginner's class on kilns, and I talk about glazes you can buy and cones and haven't specifically talked about clay, but I'll add that into my,
Maybe
That might be
a
fun.
article in the Mud Times, in addition.
could.
And the issue with using the Mud Times to convey something like that, if we don't repeat it periodically,
Right.
then somebody else comes in and, you know, they weren't here last month when the Mud Times came out or whatever, weren't a member, and then it's a problem,
But
but,
I think you need to hit them in multiple different ways.
yeah.
Remember hints from Heloise?
Yeah.
That's what we need to have.
Is what?
Hints from Heloise, only not from Heloise, just have, every time we have something go out, have a little reminder of something that we're seeing happen that people are forgetting.
Well, we thought about.
They don't need
I
a
think-
lecture, they don't need, you know,
Yeah,
just a
we tried at
reminder.
one point using pictures for examples, and people took offense because their piece that rolled over and caught somebody else's piece was now, everybody saw it, and I'm so
Busted.
embarrassed, and you can't do that to me, and so we stopped doing that.
Well, if we maybe added just a section at the beginning. Good morning, Clay Club
Yeah,
member.
we'll
Well, I
work
just-
on that, that probably doesn't need to be resolved, but I think we need to keep teaching it and keep.
We did think so too.
I'm just gonna add, from my experience, being that I travel back and forth between here and Minnesota, every time I go into a place where I'm going to fire clay or bring my clay in, they will not let me do anything until they know exactly what clay it is and where it came from. And then they can research that before I can use it, and that's what we should be doing here. But you know, people go out and buy stuff and then just bring it in without anybody really knowing it, so how you police that, I don't know, but that's what I have to do when I go into a clay studio.
Definitely makes sense.
Okay, so I guess it needs to be something that says if you're not using one of the, let's say, 5 clays at the club that you can purchase here, you need to give us some more information, and maybe that, we put it on the tickets and somehow do it. We can put it across the bottom, so as long as stickers wouldn't go over them, but most of our people are not gonna use that information, or need that information, but some of them do.
Yeah.
We do, and the glaze does.
So we
Okay.
need to write it in the policy somewhere.
I put it down here, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I'll try to.
We'll
get it.
work on the wording on that.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
I made a note so we go back to it, because I think the other thing we
Post
need
it
to
right
do.
above where the measuring station is, so they see it every time you.
Oh, that's a big thought, but then.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
you can,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you can lead a horse to water, I mean, you can only do
I
that.
know.
Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
Well, the one thing I thought maybe we should put in the policy and procedures is the cones that we fire. So it's black and white, cone 6, and that's it. You know, that's the highest we go, right?
Yep.
Not 10.
No, we're not allowed to go past.
See, and
6.
the reality of it is, this kind of goes back to the glaze area, that ought to be in the glaze area too. When people are buying glazes that are not and if they think they're gonna go to 10 here, they're not gonna get the color that's on that little magic sample down at Marshall, and they may have paid as much as $15 for the bottle. Well, I'm sorry, we don't offer that services, and they need to know, I mean, that's as important as the clay, the clay, in my opinion, too, so, okay, we'll work on that one. The
Yeah.
next line here was, no clay club kilns may be pre-programmed by members other than the trained, committee members. Is there an issue with that? Anybody? Okay. All right, and these dates are on here, the reason I put the date on here that it's on here is because these will be actions that our board will take this weekend, I believe, or this Friday, I believe. Okay, the kiln policy, all the kiln activity at the Clay Club will be conducted by the kiln team of the week. There will be no reservations or use of kilns by individuals or groups that are not pre-approved by the head of the kiln committee.
Okay, so this is the policy as it's written and as, was approved by the board in 2020.
Okay. And then pre-approval I think we made a few word changes, that's all we did on that, didn't we? Maybe,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yes.
There will be no full kiln pricing All work is to be placed on the firing, oh, I skipped a paragraph, I'm sorry, excuse me. Pre-approval may occur for the experimental work in Little Audrey only at the discretion of the head of the kiln committee. Because that's where it all comes back to. Is there any other discussion on that there? Okay, did you have anything you wanted to add here?
Well, a little Audrey, if you're doing anything very exotic, you have to, it just has a pencil function, you cannot program it. You know, so, you know, depends on what people have got or what they wanna do. I at one time had either offered to buy or tried to get the club to buy, or even buy a programmable small kiln out, you know, for special firings and stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and Carol, maybe you can answer this, but can't you get different cones to put in there for different temperatures?
Little Audrey.
For Little Audrey?
Yeah, sure. But
So,
but if you wanna do like with a slow cool.
oh yeah, you can't do it with that, I'm just talking about if you wanna do a cone 10 firing, if you've got the little cone that's for that, you can put it in there and just let it go.
Well, but that, you couldn't do cone 10 because it does not go to cone 10.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
kiln
in
is
Little
not there.
Audrey.
Well, and if I
Never mind.
understand it right, and again, there's nothing in writing, so I have nothing to go back to, but Spice told me we were only allowed to fire to cone 6. That's from the engineers, the rec center, I don't know where it came from. But what he told me was, no, we can't fire past cone 6. Period.
If I may interject, I don't, go ahead.
No.
If I may, just from my experience, every kiln has a rating, and that's done by the engineers who developed the technology for which that kiln is to operate.
This has to do more with insurance. It doesn't have to do with the safety of the kilns.
And that very well may be. In terms of the kiln and its operabilities,
Sure.
you can, it'll tell you what it's capable of. Now, if the club, in its infinite wisdom, decides this is not something we want to embark upon, that's a different discussion altogether. If it's an insurance issue, so be it. But in terms of efficiencies and cost impacts and electricities and things like that, that's a non-issue because the clubs pay for that. I mean, the rec centers pay for those
Okay,
things.
a
So
little off topic, but we'll talk about it because when I talked to Dean, that was his first comment, was Teresa, anything that you do that's out of your standard programming is gonna be hard on your kilns. Period. I didn't make that one up. He said, it's difficult it's harder work for it to maintain temperature at long periods of time than it is for it to simply get to a temperature and drop.
when we get an opportunity to discuss that, we can
Yeah,
address that
well,
issue.
and I'm not gonna argue with him because I am not the electronics expert and I don't fix all those relays and do all that stuff, so I'm just
Yeah, I
gonna
get
have to
it. That's
go
fine.
with what he told me on that one. So, you know, if 2 firings a year done that way, 20 more people that wanna do the same thing you and Kay are doing, we got trouble.
We could address that when it's appropriate.
Again, we have to look at the membership. I mean,
Yeah.
on our policies, is for the entire membership.
Well, and we also, not only just the safety issues or how we do it or what we do, but we have to look at the long-term cost back to the total membership. Because when we buy kilns, it's a total membership cost. It's not an individual, and we can't set up individual kilns for just a few people because it just is not costed, it's not appropriate for the club the way we're running it. Because we're a mass club as opposed to a private club, and we have to address as best we can.
So in other words, you do not want people to experiment and try new things?
Well, I think that in our environment here, it's very difficult for us to do that. I appreciate why people want to do it, but if it goes outside the norm, then I'd have to say no.
Can I?
Sure, come up.
doing, what I've been doing is Stephen Hill firings, and I have to mix the glazes. Now, addressing the glazes, I've taken, because I also mix glazes for Raku, which, are we gonna continue to do that? I've taken probably 20 people back there and showed them how to mix glazes. None of them ever came back. You have, you say, well, it's by percentages, and we're gonna work in grams, and they're done. They can't just dip out cups, they're done. They do a couple of them, they never come back. So as far as mixing glazes, there's not a whole lot of people that are willing to mix glazes, schlep them home, and then schlep them back with them here. There may be a few, but you got to really want to be able to do it. So as far as the outside kilns go, what's the point of having it? It's sort of like having a car saying, oh, we might need to replace the brakes or buy some gas or change the oil. We're just gonna let it sit here and not use it because we may have to replace the coils in it or something eventually. It's not used that much. And the way we burn and turn on the inside, eventually one of those are gonna move out and replace, they're sitting there, they're taking space, we need to use them, As far as people being suspicious of what we're doing, I'm willing to work up some classes, a syllabus, whatever you guys wanna see, I'll work with it. And you just say, go see Kay, talk to her, she'll fill you in on what all it takes to have that permission to do special firing. You've got to be certified, just like they have to certify people at the wood shop or at the metal shop to do special things. Yes, there's 375 people, but the people who want to do this kind of stuff are in here daily, at least several times a week. We're members of the club too. Our wants and desires shouldn't just be because it's not what everybody else is doing. And as people are here longer, they should have the ability and the avenues to I'm bored doing this and I've seen this glaze. I'll go talk to Kay or Mike or somebody and figure out how to do it. Now, we're not proposing to firing to 10 or anything. We're gonna stay in mid-range. It shouldn't be that much harder on the kiln.
How often would you be doing it, Kay?
I don't know, and that's another thing. To do a special firing out there, I have 3 to 4 months worth of work that I collect, and then I come in and I spend a whole week glazing to get a kiln load. People, when they realize those large kilns, if you want to do a special firing, you've got to really want to do a special firing. We're just not going to have that many people.
I think your analogy to the Raku class is very good. The Raku firing is very specialized. It's done several times a year. The people that do the Raku firing are in a class, they get some, they use different glazes, and the firing is different. So if you said this is a process that is open to all of the members, you have to go through glaze training. You have to be present a certain number of times. The expectation is that you might do it X number of times a year. I think that if you make it available to all members, but you have very strict criteria because people have to have knowledge, they have to have willingness, and nobody that isn't highly motivated is going to go through all of that. But I think it's
Got to really want to do it.
but the key thing is, I agree with everybody, that it is, we are a membership-based organization. And if it's open to members, that should satisfy and be consistent with our existing policies. Yet, it us the time, to do it. I mean, I did a Stephen Hill workshop when I'd been doing pottery for a year, and we didn't mix our glazes, but I'm really addicted to his glazes, and I'm willing to do it, and I've got a background in chemistry. But, you know, maybe there are other people that are also interested, just like the limited number of people that do raccoon.
But anyway, I just, we have the facilities, we have the ability, we have people who are interested in doing it, and I just can't see saying closing off this avenue for people who continue to want to grow and continue to want to develop and stuff.
I think it's kind of like having little Audrey. When we decided to buy little Audrey, it was for the few members in our club who wanted to experiment with something and were not allowed to put it in the regular kiln. So we haven't had a whole lot, but we've had those people who have wanted to know what it would look like. Can you melt glass in our pottery? So we've done that. We've also done, somebody else said, I want to do a crater glaze. So we mixed up a crater glaze and did it in Little Audrey. Have they gone on and done more and more and more? No, but they experimented, they learned something, and they went on to something else.
And if you're, also when I fire out there, I make my own shards. They're plenty big. I've never damaged a kiln shelf. If I teach that, if I have any say in teaching these classes, people will have to furnish their own shards. They can't be coming in and using the shards in here because the clay will run and just stick back.
Glazes are intended to run.
Yeah.
And that's my.
And as far as
That's
commercial glazes, there's a lot of commercial glazes that run that people can bring in here. I mean, just because you mix it yourself doesn't make guarantee it's gonna run. I mean, a lot of commercial glazes run. So, anyway, so anybody else, Mike, you have anything? Carol?
I'll have a little bit of a statement.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to listen to alternative views from what the club's already been doing. I've been around this not near as long as Carol has. I've only been doing this for over 20 years. But it's interesting that it's a journey that we all go through. Barb, you've had your own studio. Everybody that's been around this understands the dynamics of what clay is. And it's an elixir. It kind of draws you in. The folks who are doing this and have been in it for a long time, there's a reason they're doing it. It becomes a passion. And part of that passion, you can transcend that over to any other discipline in life that your path takes you. And it doesn't have to be good. If you're talking about the crafts and things, it could be woodworking, you name it. But there's that part of an individual says, I want to grow and I want to learn. And for me, it seems as if it's a perfect opportunity when you can juxtapose what is the entire vision of a club and the journey and the direction they want to go, and how can we balance all of that for the folks who are a little bit more wanting to develop their skill sets. And I don't think anybody here has any intention of wanting to change anything in a substantive way. It's a matter of let's augment what is already an amazing facility, and how can we build upon that? That's what I see as an opportunity for us right now, and that is there's a plethora of information that's available to us out there. How can we capture that? How can we intertwine that into what we're already as a club doing well? Listen guys, I'm a new guy here. I don't want to come in here and think I have the answers, because I truly don't. I'm just going from my experiences. And so to that extent, how can we do that? So Teresa has some extremely valid points, as do all of you. And that's not to be diminished or mitigated in any capacity, but I think we can build upon that if given the opportunity, and think about ways that we can create that environment that protects the club. That we know there's been some dramatic changes recently within rec centers by which we had no control over. Cost impacts are gonna be front and center moving forward. How do we deal with those issues? Can't ignore it, we're gonna have to. But it can be done if there's an appetite and a willingness to do that within the pretext of, let's grow and let's allow free expression within the community to happen. One of the things, Tracy, you mentioned with Dean and whatnot, my experience, and I'm not gonna refute what Dean has said, by and large, even in a Cone 10 electric kiln, of which we have PK kilns, we're production kilns, so they're able to withstand tremendous amounts of work. We don't think, I don't think we ever had an intention of pushing to a Cone 10. Mid-fire, Cone 5, Cone 6, if you have a Stephen Hill glaze, the beauty in that is having the capacity that a programmable kiln does provide to us, and that's to bring down your ramp, to hold it, let microcrystals grow, that's where the magic happens. We can't do that with what we're doing now in the 5 kilns out here. That's a choice. If that's a club choice in a generic capacity, fine. But if we have the capacity, which we do, let's see if we can embrace that and make that happen. How much of an impact is it on the kiln? I don't think it's that much. What you're doing is a little bit of electricity because you're holding as you come down by 50 degrees for 200 degrees, okay? That's not a big deal. We're not gonna find any more, but maybe a heightened level of use on a relay. What's a relay cost, 35 bucks? So, I mean.
Right, twice that.
Twice that? Okay, so 75 bucks, 70 bucks, whatever it is. But you're looking over the lifetime of it. Now, let's isolate it to what we're suggesting. If we can use one kiln outside that has that kind of a financial impact, then a suggestion that we had made is just that, is that on a kiln load basis, we're suggesting doubling what a per sticker fire would be. Now that might change because we know that's not quite sufficient to meet our current cost impacts today. That can be discussed. That's easy stuff. That's easy stuff. We can work through that. Are you gonna get pushback by people who want to have to pay more? Of course, nobody wants to pay more. That notwithstanding. My whole point, I'm gonna shut it down now, is we don't have to, because it's a large club, diminish the capacity of embracing a few that want to grow, but still make it such that there's a way to make it happen, to cover it, to create protections in place, etc. Thank you.
You wanna add anything, Teresa, at this point?
Maybe. Not really, I don't want to have this discussion at all.
Well, it's a tough one, that's for sure.
Okay. I, as an artist, or wannabe artist, I understand all 4 points being spoken here. That being able to grow and change and adapt and experiment and having your own vision of how things want to go is important. I'm not representing me as an artist right now. I'm representing my commitment to the club and its equipment and its wide scope. If I could depend on everybody that used that kiln to use it correctly, to everybody doesn't damage a shelf, everybody makes their own shards and makes them correctly so they work, blah, 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 then that would be great. But I can't count on people not to put things on the firing shelf on a wearboard.
But these are usually advanced people who
Well,
want to
they
do
are,
this.
right now, they are our
But
most
if you open
advanced
it up to the
potters.
membership, it's not
But
gonna
we
be.
can't
That's the
say
problem.
that's not gonna happen.
Well,
But if
then
you're
they have to
creating
take
an
it.
environment by which you have to go through a training program, call it an advanced training, I don't care what you call it, but there is a certain protocol
All
that
right.
folks need to learn.
So, out of my concern for some of this, I talked to the people at Sun City to find out how they handle it. Well, they're far stricter than we are, so you don't wanna know what they have to say. But I'll tell you, but you can only use the clay that you can buy. at Sun City. You can only use commercial places, and they specify which places you can use. So, by brand. So there are certain brands that are acceptable, there are very few that are available apparently in the club, and then you can buy your own places, but it has to be a brand name that they have specified. They have their own firing schedule, and they don't alter that for anybody, and apparently their kilns are older and not as flexible as ours, so that was sort of irrelevant. And then nobody does more than 5 pieces at a time, period. So that was the information I got from them. People at Lamb, well, they just put in a new gas kiln and they're not sure what they can do. Because they haven't quite figured it out yet, but they're working on it. And well, I mentioned Wham, I should say thank you to Wham. They donated some shelves from their old kiln, some very brand new, solid core 25-inch shelves that were just great in our kilns, and we're grateful. I think there are about 10 of them, so thank you very much. So representing the Hope Club, knowing how it functions now and how difficult it is to get people to read the directions on things, to follow the fairly simple procedures that we have for getting things done. And it's like beating your head against the wall to get things on the firing shelves correctly. But out of every class, there are 1 or 2 people who are just absolutely want to do everything. And they want to do it now, and they're gonna sign up for every class that shows up, and I don't know how you then start to filter out, well, you don't know enough yet, you can't do this. I don't wanna be the person.
I don't tell anybody that they don't know enough, this is what you need to know.
And then I think the other
And this is
thing,
what you need to do this.
each one of the things that you're talking about take somebody who's committed to teaching them. And that's not me. I got enough just being committed to keeping the kilns going, and I don't know all the things that you're doing. I don't have, that's not my specialty. So it takes a commitment to the education of it, a commitment to the, to selling it, scheduling classes, doing all of that. And if we can't offer it to the whole club, then we need to come to some agreement about how we're gonna make it work. And I, honest to God, I don't have the right answer, because I love what you're doing. I just
Let
think
Kay
it's,
give classes and learn how to do it.
Yeah, I was
Well-
gonna say, don't shut us down, give us
Yeah.
a chance.
well, I'm just,
You know,
I'm
like
not,
just say,
it's not
no,
like,
it's never gonna work.
it's not my
Let's
decision.
try and either succeed or
Yeah.
fail.
I think it's, talk to the board, you know,
Okay.
plead your case, keep pleading your case, but that's what I'm just trying to tell you, what I have to represent is a
And-
position that I don't really feel comfortable in to start with, so.
Well, and like I said, you know, when people come and
We're
complain,
learning.
why do they get to do that? Say, there's a way to go do this, here, go talk to these people, or go sign up.
Well,
for this.
no, I take scheduled classes, and you have to treat it through education,
Yeah.
just like you would rec food.
Yeah.
And then it means that you gotta be there when they glaze, and you gotta be there when they fire, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, see, and lies part of the problem for me is when, okay, I'm a brand new member to the club, I say I have X amount of years of experience, I've done this, I know exactly how to do it, I wanna go do it. How do you say to that person, no, you cannot do
Prove
that?
it.
Yeah, I mean, we
You
have
just
people
work
coming
with
here
them.
now.
Yeah, you talk, and like I said, we're also offering to pay double to cover the cost. They will have to sign saying if anything, you know, we damaged anything that they're paying for, which apparently that's already in.
Yeah, it
And-
will be, yeah.
And,
If that's the way the board goes.
And,
Anyway, that was, just, I find myself
I guess what I.
riding both horses at once.
Well, and we do all ride both horses all the time, because we have so many members. We have a responsibility, this board has a responsibility monetarily to the whole club, not just a few. And I guess I could maybe see something like this happen if we kind of ran the program like we do Raccoon. Okay, it doesn't happen every day, it doesn't happen probably every month. It's not something that is ongoing that we can just allow people to open up and change the policies to do it when they want, but we set structured classes that would take them to that point, and we do it whatever month it is, I don't know. But and I don't think it could be available 12 months out of the year, I guess is my point.
but we
Just
can't fire outside when
In the
what's
summer.
the temperature
Yeah.
Right.
So,
outside during summer.
Good for the
Yes,
summer.
ma'am.
And by doing that, that would take the pressure off of the kiln committee person, because you wouldn't be responsible.
Yeah, well, that's the only way I can see that it would
Yeah,
work, is
yeah,
to
and
but
that's
she
not
has-
fair to
she's
you
got it.
to add
No,
something
it
else.
takes an absolute commitment from,
Yeah,
particularly from Kay and Mike, to
and,
teach it, and then, again, it doesn't leave that, it doesn't answer your question of how do I run a whole kiln load of my own work? I don't know.
It is tough running, I mean,
I know that.
to have a whole kiln load. I was thrilled to have Mike share a kiln with me this last time, because,
Yeah.
if
No,
it
I-
was a bad firing, I still had pieces at home, that were,
No, I mean,
and
I absolutely am aware of that.
So,
and also the people that you would get who are interested, you would say that this is not a beginning class, not for beginners. And we've actually had classes that we've offered where we've said skill level, and we've put intermediate to advanced.
Well, we probably should do that on all of our classes, that it would save a certain amount of,
wear and tear.
Frustration's probably more than
Yeah.
for our education department sometimes,
um,
also.
okay, so I'm just looking at the time, and we probably need to move.
Yeah, we need to move on. I just would also remind you all, we're not a commercial, facility. We act like a commercial to some degree into the amount of volume that we run through here. But and my problem is, sometimes we have to go to another level at another facility. It's a community college, it's a college, it's whatever that might have some of these availabilities to you. I've never looked into them, so I have no idea what we have in this area. And I don't know whether Wham fits that or not.
Everybody backs away from the crystalline glazes.
It's cone 10. You're not
Well-
gonna do that, well, you get cone 5, 6-ish.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically taking the kiln's temperature up to, probably a solid cone 6, but, looking at your cones and looking at the firing program and all of that, there's no problem with that, with the heat that the kilns are going to. The holds are long, and it is extra stressful, but the problem that everybody backs away from is the runniness. And yes, you say people have to make shards, but are flat shards really sufficient?
no, you make little cup shards.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, I mean, they have to make,
Yeah, but,
Proper
and-
shards.
yeah, you have to make proper shards, and there you go again. That people wanna do that, and they're willing to do the work.
yeah, I mean,
It's twice that you gotta throw 2 pieces that
but
match.
that's where, Marjan backed away from it. Of course, Sun City wouldn't have anything to do with it on a bet. Wham has not fired those in the past, I believe. Now, did you work at Wham for a while?
No, I sold all of my entire studio to Connie.
Oh, to
So,
Connie?
Yeah, I haven't worked.
Yeah, cause she knew you,
You should
but,
have kept it.
I should've.
and I
I'm
tried to
saying
talk to the
myself.
people at ground floor, and I never heard back from them to find out how flexible they are for their kiln usage. partly to see what we could do, and partly to see if there was someplace else you guys could take your stuff if we can't do it. And I did not hear back from them, so I don't have any answer on that one, but, you know, that was, if you had alternatives, that would be one thing. If somebody in the community, John said, or, Jill, or somebody that has their own kiln was willing to commit to that, that would be an alternative, but I don't have those answers.
It's tough to spray things and you
And move it, yeah.
and then move it.
Absolutely.
I mean, so you
Sure.
really kinda need, when you're getting into
Facility.
spray.
It needs the fewest hands on it that you can do, yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you one other thing that's happened in the last couple of years, and somebody step in if I'm not saying this correctly, but we have had other members that wanted to do things that we could not simply do. They were shapes, they were forms that just totally kept rolling off in the kilns and whatnot. And we just simply had to say, you know what, we can't do it. And that, sometimes you just gotta say, we just can't do it for the best of everybody because it damages other people's things and that kind of thing. So this is not an unusual situation for this club. We'll have to think about how we might do it. I think the policies that we have here are your basic policies, and maybe there's one that says with an exception for a specialty class or firing or something like that, that we
Yeah.
can consider. But as a general rule, you know, it is what it is, possibly, if that's what the board agrees on, but then we have a caveat in there that says, it's kind of like anything we do, there's always an exception. So, I think we're gonna have to move on. We've spent a lot of time on this, if you don't mind. Let's talk about measuring and firing. We're trying to reiterate for our, members, firing and how to possibly pay for them properly. Because I don't think, and I'll be the first one to say, I'm probably one of them. In the past, maybe I was measuring my piece out there correctly. So we're gonna work on the verbiage here a little bit more. But basically, what it amounts to is anything over 15 inches on your measuring scale should be considered one piece. And you can't now fill, if you pay the total amount, now you can't fill out the bottom two, because what you're really buying is space in the kiln. And if you've got a tall bird, you've got a tall base, whatever it is, you've now taken up half of that kiln probably for one piece, because you can't put other shelves, you can't fill those shelves. So what you're really buying is the space in the shelf, in the kiln. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when as kiln chief, what I needed is clarification, because right now, I have little signs on the board that are very easy to misinterpret. It says over 18 inches or whatever it is, measure up. Well, it doesn't say, just, you know, everybody says, well, you put 7 stickers on it, you buy 7 stickers. No. 7 stickers does not pay for a kiln load. It's not 7 stickers high and 7 stickers wide. We need to specify at which point you switch and you're measuring up, and that's for the piece that you want to fire.
Yeah, no, we've also
Seems
had
really
that.
simple to me, but it's really hard to word, so it's clear.
And we've also had people put in one tall piece and then a whole bunch of little ones saying, and the stickers are with the tall piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the wording will change per
Yeah.
piece
Yeah.
on
We're
top
trying to
piece.
say per piece.
Per
with
You
the
need
L
a separate
15
slip
inches.
for each tall piece.
Yes.
And you don't put them all together on one slip, you need a separate slip for each tall piece.
And that's about as clear as we can get it.
You
And
know,
so I think by putting each piece, if it's over 15 inches tall, each piece requires a separate firing ticket of that many
I would
stickers.
say 8 inches.
It's simply $3.50
Whatever.
doesn't
A lot of
pay.
people do
Yeah.
holes that just, they're like, you know,
So,
over.
that's why that's included.
Well, and it's not really just about the kiln space, it's also about the amount of glaze that have gone on these items. I will tell you, and this board looked at it earlier this year, and we opted not to make a change, but the reality of it is, our glazes are going up, and we're not passing the costs on, and as the future, as you spoke to, Mike, as we change and have opportunities or have fewer opportunities to maintain our income, we may have to continue to look at how this is done. But this isn't just about kiln space, it is also about the amount of glazes that are going into these projects and how much those are. Because a large base requires a lot of glaze, let's be honest. And I think I'm probably right when I say if you went down the Mahjong to buy a jar of glaze that would cover a large base, it's at least $15 just for the glaze. Is that not correct?
Yep, they've raised.
I don't
those
think you could cover
I don't think
one
you
of my large pieces with a pint of glaze. Now, when you dip it or pour it, you
So-
don't use as much, but,
One thing that has happened also that I don't think Marty's even aware of, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it, is I just ordered glaze stickers. And a considerable raise in the cost. Number one, we had to go to a new company, the company that's been doing it in the past. The company that's been doing it in the past is no longer in existence. And we were able to get these stickers with no setup fee because it was a one-time setup fee. So we have that added on, which is $50 to $75 just to set it up. After that, we won't have that fee. But we're still waiting on these stickers because they ordered the paper with the little, and the company was out and needed to get more in, and so we're still waiting on them, so I just pray every night, please don't sell all the green stickers yet, because we don't, our.
I need to go backwards real quickly on
Okay.
something. Something that we, need to include in the Clay Club kiln policy is that the club has priority for all kiln use. But it needs to be written down.
Yes.
Dang it, if it's not in writing, it's.
And they understand.
But that's the
Yeah.
vision of taking the club in its totality and what its focus is. Nowhere
Yeah.
should we minimize
It
that
just,
point.
and my reason for that right now is that you can't buy elements. Period. Stuff won't take orders for them.
Yeah, but that won't last.
I hope
forever.
not.
I mean,
Right.
hopefully within the
Yeah.
next year that
Right now,
will
we've
clear up.
We do
got
finally
kilns
clear it
that
up.
are, got elements bulging out, sticky, you know, and I have a set of elements. I don't wanna use them if I don't have to, because I can't get new ones. So, we're limping. And we may be limping for a while till all of this settles.
The next piece on here is, mass producing of clay pots and pieces, and this is, becoming more important to the club as we get pressure from the rec center to move forward with minimizing anybody that, what they're calling mass production. And it's a simple part of our life in the future. I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna be maintained, but we didn't ever come up with a number of pieces, did we? Or the surface.
No, I
of
saw
that.
you had something written down.
Yeah, well, I think, no, I'm sorry, it is one full measuring top weekly, it's on the next page. And that, exceptions can be made. I'll give you a good example. The measuring top out there
Oh,
where
yeah,
you
club
measure
scale.
those stickers, yeah.
Yeah.
It's club scale, I'm sorry,
The board.
wrong terminology.
The board that has the
But
scale.
that is what, we feel like as a club, as a board here, when we've talked about it, is it's at the kiln spot is where we kind of bring it all down. We can't control how much clay you buy, because you don't always buy it here. You can't control a lot of things we do, but we can measure what is being put through the kilns. And that is where it would be done. And there's exceptions to that. If I've got a set of plates, I need the plates all to go in the same kiln, I understand that, and there will be exceptions to that rule. But there will be more action on limiting people bringing things in that they've made at home in boxes and say, okay, I need these 5. And they obviously are not really just making it for a few. And that's not our choice, I'll just say that. Little Audrey is a small run kiln, is used for experimental. We kind of touched on all this. I think that's fitting the way it is with what we've talked about, is it not? if a person works or produces, procedures cause damage to the kiln, they'll be responsible for the repairs, and they must follow the sign-up and payment protocol, stickers, cash, or check. And, right now, we have down here $5 for a full load for low fire and $10 for high fire for a whole kiln. With-
What?
For a little
That's
lottery.
Oh.
Stay with us, stay with us.
Sorry, I missed that other part.
I didn't make that clear.
Okay, I got a lot to fill up
He's
with.
ready to go.
No, it's a little lottery.
Daphne said she just paid
Capital letters,
$90.
little lottery.
Well, and that's the point, we have members here, and Daphne's one of them, that brought to our attention, she's paid $90 for a kiln the size of the lottery in an outside place where she can work through the summer. You know,
Margot?
so,
Yeah, but we're not paying rent or anything here either, so I mean, there's a happy medium there. So,
well, but we have
Well,
to
we're not saying we're
maintain
doing
the
that.
club,
She's
I
and we
understand,
really
to your
do need
point.
to protect our own.
Exactly.
You know, when people are making stuff at home and bringing it in here to be fired, is that really fair to the rest of the membership, that we have to maintain our kilns, we have to maintain the coils and all the things, and then we overload them with people that are just really mass producing? Because they may have a wheel at home, or they may have an area to work, but they don't have a kiln.
And this has happened frequently. We have a few that do that, and
That's always gonna be a delicate conversation.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's
Yes,
always
it
gonna
is.
fall into the purview of the wheel,
Well,
because we can always be prolific, like crazy.
Well, I think,
this wasn't wheel. No, it isn't always wheel.
It's
We
hand-built.
have some members that.
Really?
Yeah, some of it's hand-built too.
Yeah, oh, yeah. So, anyway, yeah.
I think we have to have something in our policies that sets limits. I believe that the rec center is asking for that.
Well, and they've just changed the RRMPs, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I've read them all, but I don't know exactly what they're specific, but we can relook at this before we finalize this again. But they are saying it will be the responsibility of the club to minimize this production. Because we're a social club, and that's what we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be making a living out of this. So, it could be a problem. Let's talk about glazing. Unfortunately, Linda had to leave, and I lost track of it, she was leaving, so my apologies. Only commercial glazes can be used and fired in the club's regular kilns, is what I would probably insert in here, regular ones, if we decide to go to a specialty thing with this other thing. And that's due to the potential ruining or damaging the equipment. with,
And other people's
different
work.
things. Pardon me?
Of course.
But like I
happen
said,
to
there's a
be-
lot of commercial glazes that run worse than
Oh, I know.
anything I can mix up.
But we have to set a limit somehow, okay?
Recipe glaze mixing will not be permitted at the club. And due to the limitations of our space and the possible equipment damage that can go with it.
Well, then that wipes out raccoon then.
Might I address that just for a moment?
Sure.
It's, you know, forgive me if that feels like that's an excuse, okay? We all work in limited space on some level, and yes, I'm not gonna concede or deny that that's limited space, but it's still something that's a usable space. Chemicals have always been there, they're not being used right now. If it's a matter of cost, that's a conversation that can be had and resolved, I'm sure. Again, it's going back to the kiln issues. We need to train people so they know how to use it. No different than mixing chemicals. Kay addressed that, and I think she's right. Most people will not want to get involved because it takes a certain level of commitment and education to learn how to do it. It's here, let's use it, let's get the permission, let's get the protocols. She says you're gonna schlep it, make it, take it out. You're never gonna interfere with the primary club objective, and that is if Linda's mixing or her team is mixing, they have first run, but it's here. It just seems,
I think it needs to go under the same auspices as the special kiln use or scheduling classes, that if part of the being able to do the special firing and whatever involves education in classes, then so
Yes.
does mixing your own places.
And that's perfectly fine, and I
And
think that's
it
what
needs
we've
to be
always
done
suggested.
in the class environment, not, well, I just wanna use the kiln room right now, or the glaze room right now. Because that got too chaotic for Linda's, glaze team.
Well, and that's what I didn't say, and part of this caveat is back to this specialty, classes or methods, how we're gonna get to satisfy some of the special things we do, whether it's raku or whether it's this. I think those recipe glazes would be within a classroom environment. But I also think that the chemicals need to be paid for by the people that mix the glazes, because right now,
Yeah.
that's not the case.
All right, let me ask you this, and, you know, this is just stuff on the table. Right now, whatever that new glaze thing is, and if we raise prices, let's say you went from 50 cents to 75 cents per stick to help offset the cost. Whatever that happens to be, you can extrapolate how much it's gonna cost to fire a kiln load. In that club member is buying glaze to dip, to pour, whatever.
But it isn't like, if
It
I
isn't
wanna
special.
use anything that's not mixed in buckets, that's even things out of the glaze room, if they're not sitting there in that buckets for everybody to use, then I need to buy my own.
Just
And
like
that's
we
the
go to
way-
Marshall's
that's-
to buy our own.
That's just the way it is, that's the way we do it.
All right, so that notwithstanding, then it becomes that's not a cost issue now, that's just something you wanna do. And, okay, fine, you know,
Well,
we
if
don't
I
have to have
wanna
a way in
buy,
everything.
if I
it's
wanna
fine.
buy a cup of, if I wanna take Sapphire Blue home, I have to pay per cup.
Okay.
If I want a different glaze, I go to Marjan's and I pay. If I wanna buy red gold in the back room, I pay.
Or
So-
offside, or
Whatever,
Darvan,
right,
or
so
Russian medium.
It's the same as if you went to Marjan's and purchased these or ordered your own chemicals. Make sense?
Yeah.
Just cause it's
That's fine.
present in the club doesn't mean that it's included in your sticker price,
All right.
Yeah.
I think is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, and if that's the case, then I suspect there is a pathway to figuring out how to offset the cost for using
Just like
chemicals.
that.
And we can work that out, and that's fine.
And that's what we need to do, because we've discovered that it's not being paid for that way. That we've just been putting them in the inventory, and they're being paid for through the sticker price, and that's not appropriate, probably not.
Oh, it's not catching it at all.
So I think
Even
the
before
next
price
line though in
increases.
this takes care of what we said about raku. You know, we said, well, we can't do raku if we can't do recipe glaze. Well, mixing of glazes inside the club will be limited to authorized trained glazing committee members for club use only. In other words, raku, the way we're doing it today, is a club use, and they pay a special price for that. They pay an extra price to be in the raku class every time they go and they participate. Is that not correct? But I think some of those considerations need to be made as we develop this other process. Okay? Sure. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Could we, instead of saying club use, could you say class use, and then it,
More of a semantic.
For club/class.
yeah, for club class use?
Okay.
And that then says that if you're not doing this as part of a class, you're not doing it.
It's a good call.
Okay.
Well, Raku pays more.
Yes.
Yeah.
They pay $20 to fire, whether you fire one piece, two, or three. So,
But they
they
don't
are
go in and
paying
mix
for
their own
that.
glazes in the glaze room, and that's what,
Well,
They
we're asking authorized trained people to do that.
Mhm.
That's what happens.
Right,
I mean, Kay is
That's
one
why
of our
we've had Kay do
volunteers,
the
I
raku
think.
glazes,
Yeah.
she's
We
the
do
authorized
the
person.
glazes
and if people are doing it with Kay and Carol's supervision in a class setting, that's a whole different
In
ballgame.
fact, it's very interesting because Daphne and I set it up so that people who were doing the raku frequently, they chose a glaze just like the class glazes, and they were responsible for mixing them. We
Sure.
taught them how to mix
Yeah, I
them,
remember
and they didn't like doing it.
that. No, it's hard work.
People don't.
They didn't like doing
Pain
it.
in the neck.
Yeah.
Most people
Don't
don't.
Yeah, so
come in
Kay
those
took it
buckets
over.
already done.
so then it was either Kay or myself mixing them,
Yep.
or Daphne.
We did go ahead and identify that for personal glazes, including commercial glazes over cone 6 should not be used at the club. Talked about that a little bit earlier. Clay chemicals cannot be used for personal use. Clay will not be buying chemicals with that. I think that's what we've done. I must have typed that twice. Good. I'll check that one out. All members using the glaze room must sign a release form to work in the glaze room regardless, and that would go with the specialty cases, or specialty classes. Any clay club chemicals may be used by qualified members only for RACU and used only by club members during RACU. Well, I guess that kind of comes back to that same scenario
Yeah,
we talked about.
and you need to include.
But it
the-
spells it out.
Or special classes,
For special-
or advanced classes.
Yeah,
How
or
about
advanced
advanced classes?
Advance.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one, the team member, Blaze team members must do Blaze work that is equal to Clay Club members who monitor. This is talking about the time that they spend in there, and they do, the Blaze committee does a really good job of keeping up with what time they're in there and what they're not, so they get their 16 hours minimum in. And we all know there's a lot of committees that it's a whole lot more than 16 hours, but we are trying to make it, comparable to the monitor credit that they get. And that's it.
Okay, I just have a thought, and I'm sorry it's throwing in things, but it might soothe some, angst in here. If we are going to teach these classes and teach people how to do it, then we need to have an avenue for them to be able to continue. So my idea is that we set up a firing shelf in the back area or the back, and when that shelf is full of club members' pieces, then we fire the kiln as a joint kiln, just like we do in here, and it might take a while.
In what back area?
We set it up
the back,
outside.
where the
in back.
kilns are.
That's what.
That is a
Like
special
that kiln
firing
area,
shelf
right?
for, the Cone 6 long pull program. And when that shelf is full of people, yours, Kay's, people you've taught, then then it gets loaded in the kiln and the kiln gets fired. And then it is a club activity and not, and it gets probably loaded by the kiln, by you and Kay. And you need to be on the kiln committee to fire a kiln.
You're just trying to get me.
So you just got elected.
That's a recruitment tool right there.
You know, and speaking of that, I mean, anybody that's using a kiln should be on the kiln committee.
Absolutely.
And even with RACU, you need to have somebody on that, whoever's out there firing needs to be on the kiln committee.
Definitely.
So, not a bad idea. The only potential caveat to that is if whomever is putting their work to be fired in that kiln is gonna be utilizing, so in other words, let's say we all are Stephen Hill and our ramp program is the same.
That's the
Perfect.
only program that's
Perfect, that
approved
makes
right now.
sense.
Yeah.
Right? But if you had something else that, let's say it was a Cone 6 crystalline glaze,
No.
that's a different program.
Programs have to be pre-approved. There's no switching programs around.
So right now, what we would say is, well, if you said
The
you
only
wanted to
thing
do a
that's on
crater
the
glaze.
table is the Stephen Hill firing.
That's
All
the
right,
only
we'll
one
take
that's.
one battle at a
Take
time.
one.
Yeah.
Well,
Get through
it's
that,
a-
and then
it's
you
an
can move
opportunity
on.
for us to try this, see how it
That's right.
goes
Okay.
before we expand it too far and get ourselves out with
Yeah.
a lot of issues that we haven't even forecast.
So,
So
I mean,
think
there's
that
no
would be
point in
way-
teaching
And that's
people
fine, I
how
was
to do
just
it
doing
if we
big
can't
picture
do
things
it.
too, so that's fine.
Yeah, test the
Now,
process.
Yeah.
one other question, for example, if we were doing a Sager firing, and one of the best ways to get the best results is to not do a Cone 05 disc, but to do an 010. So, what do we do? Do we
Well, I
just
think
then
that's
ask?
it, that's in the classroom, in a class situation. I mean,
Okay, and then
Harley's
just
not
get
gonna
permission.
come in and do psych or firing on her own. It always has to be done with a qualified instructor, and I think maybe you're the only one that's qualified right now. That's, you know, that's kind of a different thing, but of course it would be fine. And then,
Yeah.
you know, it's pretty darn easy to push O10
Did we-
instead of O5.
Did we do that on a kiln or did we do it in the record kiln?
No, you do your bisque firing, the first firing, and the regular.
Well, yeah, but
And
any of those
then
kind
you
of
do
things
the
are done in
second.
a class
You do your bisque
situation.
firing first.
Right, but
Would
then
you
we
have
didn't
a
And
say.
you don't want to go as hot,
We need to come
because
back
it
to
doesn't
topic.
absorb.
Okay, I'm sorry, it was my fault.
These are
Yeah.
opportunities that we can think of, but I think we have to start at the beginning, and then if
Yeah.
we get to add and we get to grow, that's great.
Yep.
But we gotta get there. Okay, I appreciate the time, I'm trying to decide. Give me 10 minutes to talk about the, finance on the tech, and we'll
Oh,
get out of here.
yeah, I'd love to hear that.
And we'll do this again on Friday. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say one thing, Margie. I think that also when it comes to setting this up, you have some people who are very interested and who would be very willing to help get it all in place and get stuff written down and training and, you know, that kind of thing. So it isn't up to the one person to do it.
Yeah, it has to be, well, yeah, I'm not qualified. I don't know how to do it.
But, you know, just.
I understand the programming, that's
Yeah,
fine, but I
okay.
don't know the
We've
process.
gotta finish
Yeah.
our agenda, and I think those are things that are well
Okay.
thought that
All right.
I do wanna tell you, we, as the board, we had voted to go in with the Silver Club and contact a tax attorney regarding the tax status, our tax status, which is a 501c7. And we had that conversation, we had it through a Zoom meeting, and what came out of it was the attorney recapped her meeting with us. We did not get a copy of the video, we just got a recap of the meeting, which was fine. And she gave us some other information that is valuable in my opinion, in that it takes a 501c3, 501c4, and a 501c7 and gives us across the board, this is what this one does, this is what this one does, yada, yada, yada. She highly recommends that we stay with a 501c7 because we are a social club and we are considered a recreational social club. In other words, our recreation is clay and wheels and all those other good things. So, having said that, I would highly recommend to the club and to this board that we stay at 501c7. That is something that if down the road, somebody says, do we wanna change, it could be done, okay? It's gonna cost money and it's gonna take time, but for now and until we see where we go in the future without sales and the rec center, the way they set it up, is not gonna allow us to have sales like we used to. The pot party's gone because they're not allowing us to use rec center property for any of those things. So, that's not gonna happen, and of course, part of the 501c7 structure is that we cannot raise a bunch of outside funds through sales. So we couldn't have a pot party, even if I rented and do it the way we always did before. If I went to Surprise and did it, we couldn't do that and still qualify with our taxes. So we all need to forget that if we change our status, it'll get us to sales. It won't, it's not at this point. The other thing they did say, and this was one of my big concerns, was do we have any liabilities for our past transactions, meaning that we weren't paying the taxes as a 501c7? The answer to that question for that attorney is, it's up to you to report, the club should go to the IRS, file it properly this year, and say to them, this then begins that 3 years of taxation, possibly. She doesn't think, if we are honest and upfront with the IRS and tell them, this has occurred, and it's occurred because that's the way we were told to do it, basically, that they will charge us, and they won't take our status away from us. We just need to make it upfront. If they indeed
said, okay, you owe some back taxes, it would only be on 3 years. And if you owe the back taxes, it's going to be on the amount that is outside of what would be approved if you were a 501c7. So it's not on your whole income anyway. And when you do that, and this is where it's a little bit different than what they've been telling us at the rec center, we actually can do that on a net basis, not a gross basis. And that's where this is a little bit different than what the rec center's been saying. So I guess there may be some liability. I'm sleeping a whole lot better these days though, because one of my first questions was whether it's 7 years, 3 years, what is it? It's only 3 years. It only goes back to 7 if there's fraud involved. There is no fraud involved with anything we've done. And the other thing she said is we can show them that as of May, we quit this. We quit having sales. We don't do it anymore. And when you can say to the IRS and you bring it to their attention instead of waiting for them to audit you, you're in a much better position. And I suspect that's probably some of the things that are going on with the rec center. Now, I can't say that that's what's happening, but the rec center has hired a charitable tax attorney out of Texas, and they're trying to get some of this stuff defined a whole lot better. We're still hoping, or I am hoping, that the rec center will give us a little bit better guidance so that not every club is going out and doing their own thing with their filings. But at this point, we'll sit down with this board, next year's board, lay this stuff out, and then we can decide how we're gonna file taxes this year. I don't think that's our choice totally. I think it has to be also involved with the new board because we need to all be in sync as we move forward. But I don't think the liability is near as bad as I thought it could have been.
That's a relief.
Yeah, it really is. And the fact that if we do get charged for back taxes, it's only on the difference between what we did with outside business. And it's the net. So it's not, you know, the big sales, the whole total all sales. Now we're back to that 5% that we earned. That's the way I hear and I read this at this time. Caveat, I'm not a tax attorney. But I'm going to give and she did provide us a lot of more information. And I'm going to suggest to the board that we take this information to Rob Upton. He is an attorney. He's not a tax attorney, but he's an attorney that's one of our members. His past life, he was a professional attorney. And let him look at this too. And then if we still need next year to go find a good CPA that walks us and takes us through this, I think would be very well spent, good money.
Was there any further discussion about the monies that are already within our accounts that amount, how fast it has to be spent?
Actually, we asked that, or the Silver Club asked that, because they have quite a bit of money, more than we do. And she said there is no limitations on that amount. She said the way you make those monies, there is a limitation, obviously going forward for them. But there is not a limitation, and I'm still waiting to hear from the rec center exactly what they feel our guidelines should be. And you know, the rec center is now encouraging that we go get our own tax people to help us, where before they didn't want us to do that kind of thing. I'm a little concerned if the Clay Tub does this and the Mill Club does this, and other things, it can draw attention to the whole community. And I will be going back to the rec center and say, okay, our board, or our boards together, have decided this is what we want to do for the 2021 taxes. You need to know that. I mean, I think we owe it to them. I don't think we can just totally ignore this. I think that's why we paid the attorney.
I appreciate
And we
you
didn't-
taking on it.
and we
Yeah,
didn't
no
pay-
kidding.
we didn't pay her a lot of money. You know, for an hour, we split the cost with her. It's not like we spent buku money. It was $175. But I think we at least have to hear what she said, take this and give it full consideration. So, and do I have any real answers what we're gonna do? I don't, but I think you need to know that this information has been provided to us. She's given us a lot of paperwork, and I'll get Rob to look at it and see if he can make more sense than I'm gonna be able to. I'd like to encourage you. So, but I am encouraged that she said it was on the net, that if we had back taxes to owe. That's very important in my
That's a
opinion.
huge difference.
Yeah, because the rec center's been telling us it's on gross. And now, going forward, we can't, I mean, we have to run our business on this gross and not taking more than 15% of outside money from outside people that are not on the list. I get that, but what we've done in the past, it does not appear to me that we would be taxed on the whole amount. It's net. That's the way she said. So,
Will
Next.
you look into one thing for me?
Sure.
And it's a different, will you look into the new RRPs as they're written from the board?
uh-huh.
There was a thing in there about not firing kilns when
Yeah.
there's no one in the building.
Yeah, but it was always in the RMPs that way. There's also another topic that I'll mention too, that's in the RMPs. RMPs clearly state we're supposed to have 2 monitors at all times, and we never have. I don't think that's really changed, but I need, you're right, the RMPs do say that, but they always have said that. Now,
I think the exemption was given to us
I think
that
so
we had to
too.
start them by noon,
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
yeah.
But are they saying in our
there
area?
has to
Well,
be somebody in the club.
It says kilns is what it says, so see, I don't know whether, like the glass down here, whether there's kilns run overnight or not, I don't know.
I think,
But that's
no,
been in there for a
but
while.
the ceramics might have the same issue, but
Cause
yeah, no, the way it reads is there has to
Yeah.
be somebody in the club when the kilns are fired.
Okay, cause otherwise we
I'll
have
stay all
somebody
night.
here on property.
So what's the cost of
We're
a?
putting us
Wow.
on
They
diet.
stay-
They only stay till 8 o'clock. They're not on property all night.
No, I know that, but it's a lot longer than,
Dispensation for that, is what I think.
lot longer than.
But cause there is a way we can do it, but it would require loading them on Monday and firing them on Tuesday, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning and.
I'll ask.
Well, you
them.
can program, you can delay
Yeah,
the program.
Right,
to
but
get
then,
it started,
they have to
so-
turn off,
But
cause
you- yeah.
we're open till 8 that night, so they would
Yeah.
be on their way down.
All right.
by-
Exactly.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Margie, and the
But
board.
it gave me a sour stomach.
Yeah, yeah.